we go. I'm going to share my screen. He said he can't make it today because he's going out in his kayak because the fall color in Charleston. And he sent me these photos. Whoops. Good to practice this stuff. Photos from yesterday. Oh man, hang on. You guys still see this? Rick, you there?
Yeah.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm getting weird messages from Zoom. I love this intentional blur that he did. David, that's just crazy. The cypress swamp rolling around. So let's just hope he doesn't get hit with a attacked by an alligator again. Well, he didn't even get attacked. He almost ran one over. Isn't that gorgeous? I love this one. Hang on, I'm going to shut off my sound on this computer back here. Oh, pretty cool. So that's where David is. He's off in his kayak exploring that stuff.
Is on 2353 N California Avenue in Chicago. It's 1,752 miles away, and it's.
Hey, all right, Woody. Looks like something happened. I saw live streaming.
We're good. We're going. So
good.
We had a little technical issue to start here, but we're going live on YouTube, and everything's good.
Sweet. Well, welcome everybody over on YouTube. Welcome to everybody here. We had a chance to just kind of all chat a little bit. It's great to see old friends and new friends, and a lot of the people that we had in the workshops that we just ran in Yellowstone, the Tetons, and Moab. And we're actually going to run through and show a few pictures from that before we take questions. You can always type questions into the chat window. We'll be watching that. You can ask questions on YouTube. Darren's going to field some of those to us. Darren's watching. We got Rick, Woody, Darren here live with us. David Archer is off. We were just showing some pictures. He's in Charleston on his kayak photographing beautiful fall color. He wanted to be out for morning light because it's peaking, and I don't blame him one bit. So good day today. We're just going to go through some images from the workshops that we just ran in Yellowstone, the Tetons, Moab, and take Q&A. We do want to announce, and we'll say it again at the end though, that the next office hours is going to be Tuesday, December 7th. I always remember that, the day which shall live in infamy, right? 10 a.m. Pacific, and we're going to have a little photo contest. We're going to ask everybody to submit to a gallery like we do when we do image reviews, and an image from this year, from 2021, your favorite image from 2021, no categorical boundaries, make it a JPEG, 2,500 pixels maximum on the long edge, upload it to that gallery with just your name as the title of it, a single image. And we'll go through, and the three favorite ones, we're going to give an Unleashed Bluetooth smart controller. I just did a video last week on YouTube where I talked about the enhancements that they've done to the original and the new one that's coming out that's going to work with Sony, Fuji, Canon, Nikon, and Panasonic. So they're expanding out to be able to work with all the camera brands with the new 2022 version. You can pick to get one right now, the original version that works with Canon and Nikon, or you can get the new ones as soon as their Kickstarter campaign is over. And we're also going to give a $75 just gift certificate to anything you want in my store. So we'll go through, we'll pick our three favorite images. And we'll show as many of those images as we have time to show. If we have a huge amount of submissions, we might not be able to get through it all in the office hours, but it's going to be an image review. So go ahead and jump in and upload your favorite image of 2021 once Woody gets that gallery up and running. I'm not sure when that'll be, but just check over at the hudsonhenry.com/office hours site. And eventually that gallery will be up, I'm sure, pretty soon. Woody?
Yeah, next day or two.
Okay, cool. Rick, do you have anything you want to throw out there before we...
Not right now.
Okay.
I got lots of questions. You've got answers.
We got lots of questions. I just wanted to run through because we had such a good time with such a great crew of people in these workshops that we ran. And I thought I'd just show a few of those images. Oh, this is where David Archer is right now. I love this moon photo. He sent me these shots of why he can't be here this morning. And I get it. All right. So let's jump in and take a look at some of these shots from what was just an epic workshop. Some of these I sized a little small. I'm just running through Bridge as a slideshow. I'm going to go pretty quick. But here we had a crew like day one in Yellowstone. This is all in Yellowstone. Just as we drove into the park, a group of female bighorn sheep came walking along the hillside, our good friend Ron under a falling rock sign. We had really beautiful clear weather, and it was perfect for doing stars in the Milky Way. There's the Big Dipper out over Swan Lake and Milky Way. Ravens and David, who's not here. Just some really nice, this was before shooting the Milky Way. This one night we snuck out to the edge of the lake to find a good spot to get reflections and stars. And there was a swan in Swan Lake. And the biggest lens I had was a 50 millimeter. And I just crept up with my 51.8 and got as close as I could to get this reflection shot in really low light. I was glad it was a 1.8. Tobey out there getting ready for Milky Way. You can see all our tripods. The Lamar Valley was just beautiful. This is playing around with that 15 millimeter Sunstar lens that Nisi makes. Had a bit of fall color. Dale and Rick working through some Sony settings. There were always beautiful bison shots, but I love having that little bit of fall color in the background. We had some really great wildlife moments on this particular Yellowstone journey. Sunrise at Mammoth Hot Springs. Put all that light into those pools and colors. It was chilly, but not that cold. There's a good friend Owl out there in the mist. Of course, you got to hit Old Faithful. This is fountain paint pots, which is just gorgeous at sunset. And then we saw the boys, the bighorn sheep, come through, and they were down in the river as we drove in right below us. So it was kind of fun to shoot down on them. Headed out. Just a great trip. Roman, David, the crew out there watching this big buffalo come up the hill toward us. The Yellowstone River. Falls. Tom. It was just a great one. I love how the steam is coming up from this hot spring in the river below. Oh, we saw the mama bear with two cubs rolling along the ridge adjacent to us. Close up with the elk. Then on to the Tetons. First night, just kind of scouting around in there before everyone got there. We saw this nice family of moose coming through the pools. Nice kind of fall hiking. There's Bob. Who I said, I don't recognize you. I don't recognize you, Bob, without the big lens. Oh, that morning out there with those, just that purple color and that overcast with all the trees going into winter. Pronghorns, little pronghorns. Yeah, misty colors. We had a bit of every kind of weather in the Tetons, from a little snow to rain to sunshine. Some sunshine on the fall color. We stopped traffic for a good long period on the highway to photograph. Everybody wanted to photograph these hay bales, and we got everyone out of the van, and traffic started stopping on the highway out to the ski resort at Teton Village, and everybody thought there was a bear. And it's like, where's the bear? And people were like, no, they're just photographing hay bales.
Like, what the hell are they doing that for?
I know. It was funny. It was one of the funnier moments in the workshop. This is one of my favorite shots ever at Charlie. This is his quest for the Grail, where we interrupted the wedding. Oh, it was such a nice night down at Oxbow with Roman there and Rebecca, Al. There's some of the weather that we had was just so dramatic. I had to do a little time-lapse work and talk about time lapse. It's always crazy how some clouds are going one way and some are going another. You know, getting out there with the time lapse, you can actually see what's happening. I thought this night at Oxbow we were going to get an epic sunset, but it wound up kind of fizzling. But those lenticular clouds were sure doing some neat stuff. We saw some great wildlife in the Tetons too.
Mostly moose, though.
There was a lot of moose. We did see a lot of moose, and we got some buffalo. We were out prowling. I loved having that bit of fall color. Yeah. Charlie and CJ. Some more of those just crazy cloudscapes. And if you didn't like the weather 1 minute, just wait a little bit. It was dramatic. It really worked out perfectly because we were hoping for Milky Way and Yellowstone, and we got that kind of severe clear for that. And then And then we had drama in the Tetons. And then it dropped a little bit of snow right at the end.
Yeah.
So we got to rephotograph everything with a whole different feel to it. It was great. There's DC. Bit cold, but great. Fun times, Dave, CJ, Bob. That last night, that Moose, he was not in a great mood. And I think he had a little bit of a sore leg, and it was snowing, and he wasn't in a great mood to be photographed, but we still got some good shots. And then we had Moab. Just always, Moab is such a great place to take workshops. I mean, this is in Double Arch at sunset. I just love it up in there. Such a photogenic spot. Here's a vertical panorama looking almost, all the way arching over ground to ground almost. There's Sarah looking out. David, Rick in sight down there. Another panorama. Out in Lower Park Avenue with the Oregon and the courthouse towers and the three gossips. Early and Rick. Raven, this is in Canyonlands. CJ, David, on the edge. Might not want to show that to Paula. Speaking of on the edge, check this guy out. Right. It was a really beautiful evening with the LaSalle's lit up all in that purple glow. Ron, it's difficult to take a bad photograph of Ron Abels, I swear. Here's a pano at dawn of the windows and turret arch. There's Gary up in position, and this wonderful couple who kind of helped some of the people get up into that spot and just were super friendly. I actually went to the work to get them this photo of cloning some of the people out that were actually in there. There's David on the way up to Delicate Arch. Beautiful sky when we got up there.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And then we really got a sunset that night. One of the better sunsets I've ever had there. Here's a little handheld pano backed up so that we could get most of the people there in. We had a really dramatic weather evening going up the river. It was just beautiful. And that led to a beautiful dawn with some lenticulars out over the windows. Some cool clouds flowing through our scene. Reflections because of the rain that it dropped. On with those lenticulars over the LaSalle's. Just, I can't help but think about time lapse when I see clouds doing these kinds of things, and you've got foreground like that. And that's it. There you go. It was a pretty fantastic trip with just a great group of people. I want to shed big, huge shout out to everybody that was on all three of those trips for just making it so fantastic, and to Rick and to David for helping run them. It was wonderful.
A lot of fun.
Right. It was a lot of fun. And we'll be back in Yellowstone in the Tetons this next fall, which I think we'll go a little bit earlier. We were timing it for when we have perfect fall color 2 years ago, but the seasons and the weather are so variable these days. I think we're going to time it just a little bit earlier, hoping that we get the peak fall color, but a little less chance of snow in the Tetons.
Yeah.
Make our lives less stressful, that's for sure.
It was very cold in the Tetons a couple of mornings.
It was. I was wearing my insulated muck boots. Actually pretty much the whole time in the Tetons. I was comfortable in those. All right. So shall we jump in and do a little bit of Q&A?
Sure. Actually, a couple things come up in chat. Our friend Bob says he just had his Drobo Raid crash. Wanted to know what backup system did you use?
Well, I actually have a Drobo backing up a Drobo. I've never had a crash though. Not just one drive, a complete system failure. You could email me. But I keep one Drobo backing up another. I have an old Drobo and then a faster USB 3.2 Drobo. And then I keep everything backed up in Backblaze just in case there were a house fire or a flood or something.
Yeah, I do Backblaze too now.
Backblaze is an affordable solution. You just want to make sure that you have unlimited upload capability that isn't throttled to some really small amount. You know, I have 12 terabytes, I think, backed up in Backblaze. They'll sell you an unlimited plan really reasonably, but sometimes, you know, I was on Comcast when I first set it up, and, you know, I moved a couple of terabytes through their really throttled upload port, and then they sent me a notice that they were going to start charging me by the megabyte if I did too much uploading. And I switched to CenturyLink, which doesn't throttle you at all. And you get, you know, I got gigabit fiber, and I think I uploaded like 800 megabytes a second. So everything was gone.
And you can send them a drive. You can work out with Backblaze to send a drive to sort of get yourself set up, which I think is a pretty smart way to go.
Yeah.
You know,
and they can send you drives if you have a breakdown too. They have a big deposit, but they send it back to you when you send the drives back to them. So
yeah,
it's a great system.
Bob says that his Drobo just stopped recognizing any drives. So that sounds like a support issue more than anything else.
I hope that they do a good job with support with you. I've heard mixed things. I've never had to deal with it. I've just never had a problem with any of mine.
Yeah.
I have some that I'm running. Gosh, it's probably been 8 years I've been running the one that backs up my main. I keep waiting for somebody to come out with the perfect system like Synology or some of these others. But, you know, I figure eventually we're going to get to where there's solid state, fast, massive capacity systems that, you know, I think we're heading there. I'm trying to kind of limp along with my Drobos till that reality arrives.
I have some friends who are using, hey Hudson, it looks like you're still sharing your screen.
Really?
Although I'm not seeing it, but.
No, now I am, and now.
And there went Hudson.
Well, while he's trying to figure it out, Bob, I do know a bunch of people who use Synology systems, and they're happy with them. So, and I know, and one of the complaints that I keep hearing about Drobo is their support just really stinks, you know. Yeah, Hudson did fall off last time as well. So, yep. Hang on 1 second. Yes. Yeah, Dave, I think it is CenturyLink. So I think Woody is the host. You're the host, right, Woody?
Yep. And I don't see him.
Can you, he's in the grid. Can you boot him off?
Remove.
There you go. All right, he should be back on in just a minute. Hand puppet time. Huh. Yeah.
Anybody else we want to kick off while we're here?
Nah. You coming back, Hudson? All right, he's back now. I see him. He's muted.
So weird.
Can you see him? He's in the list.
Hudson, you there?
Are you guys hearing me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so it brought me back in the second. It just fritzed for a second, brought me back in. You just needed to find me and unmute me. I had to restart everything when you booted me off. I'm like, mute me. I just said host would. All right, so anyhow, so back to I heard everything. So
okay.
there was never a minute I wasn't there.
All right. Well, so anyway, I think sort of the big question that there were a lot of Nikon questions, but you know, people want to know a little bit more about what you're thinking about the Z9.
Well, I'm excited to get it. I mean, I've seen the same videos, I think, as everybody else. I haven't really had one in my hand. It looks like it focuses blazing fast. I think that the stacked sensor that they've produced for this thing is so fast. It enables them to do autofocus calculations faster. It enables them to not even need a mechanical shutter. We're going to have to test whether that's really true with flash lighting conditions and some other things. But and you know, maybe patterned not so high grade LED lighting or indoor lighting, see how it works. But it just looks fantastic. I wish it were smaller, and I wish they were going to immediately bleed that technology down to some kind of Z8 that has the same kind of stacked sensor or the same stacked sensor and autofocus system. But it'll probably take them a little while. I would hope that they can get that out by the end of next year. That's the big thing that's coming. I'd also like to see them build an APS-C camera with that kind of capability, something more advanced than the Z50. I love my Z50. It has the same autofocusing capability, and the ZFC is wonderful too. I have those two cameras sitting next to me. I would love to have a APS-C body to use with my long lenses for wildlife and sports that has that same kind of capability like the Z9 in a smaller package. So there's a lot of questions to answer about it. It's a high megapixel camera designed for sports and action and, you know, war zone photography, bomb proof like the D5 and D6 before it. Will it stand up at high ISO, you know, noise wise is a big question. I think there's something smart about Canon making the R3 a lower megapixel camera because it's built for action, just like Sony does the A9. So we'll have to wait and see and test, but it's exciting. It's all about that new sensor. And, you know, I don't think very many people have really gotten a chance to work on it with full raw files and really test it in a bunch of conditions. We'll be seeing reports as it comes out. I'm actually headed on a two kite surfing trips to Mexico in December and January. And I'm hoping I get to bring it along for at least one of those to really test the heck out of it with seabirds and kiteboarding. So we'll see.
Okay. Let's see here. Other Nikon questions. Couple of people were talking about sort of making the transition from DSLRs to mirrorless. Jim asks, you know, his current DSLR is a D850. What advice do you give for the interim need for a backup body until he can spring for another mirrorless? He just bought a Z7 II, you know.
It's funny. So, you know, gosh, I don't remember when they launched the original Z7 and Z6. I was on a workshop with David Archer and some of the people in this meeting actually in Mount Rainier. And I remember ordering one and doing a video saying, I'm going to hate this camera. You know, I'm not hate, but, you know, I'd tried out Panasonic and Fuji and Sony's mirrorless cameras and just wasn't as happy as I was with my D850 and D500. So I said, you know, I'll order this new Z6 and see what I think of it. And then, you know, I can make a video and send it back. And I ordered it and I used it. And I used it exclusively for a few weeks. And then I went back to use the D850 and it just felt so much less capable in my hand. Did everything except maybe birds in flight, especially with the original autofocus system that came with those cameras. But for the kinds of things I do the most of, travel and landscape, it just worked better in every way. It opened up all kinds of new stuff for me. And I couldn't go back to the DSLRs. And I think that if you guys get the camera and really use it exclusively for a little while, you're going to find the same thing. I honestly think that the Z50 is a great backup camera. It really is a fine little camera. Plus it's small and it's light. And if you think about getting it with that little 16 to 50 f3.5 to 6.8, I think, pancake lens, it becomes this awesome thing to stick in your pocket and take out with the family or around town or just have with you like your cell phone. And then it'll autofocus and work fine with your 70 to 200 or even my 500 PF on the on the FTZ adapter. It's not so fantastic up at really high ISO like the D500, but it's fast and it's a great little backup to the Z7 II.
Okay, well, you mentioned the FTZ adapter. We had a question from Jim who asked if you ever envision an older f-mount lens to autofocus on the Z, or is that something that's not technically possible?
You know, I mean, I use even ancient Nikon lenses through the FTZ, the old manual focus ones, and any lens will work with it in manual focus. The older autofocus lenses that are really getting a bit outdated and long in the tooth that don't have built-in AFS motors, probably not. You know, I mean, they might work with the Z9. I don't know if we've tested that or if anybody's talked about it yet. If it has a built-in autofocus motor, they kept the cameras smaller and the battery life longer by not including an autofocus motor and offloading that to the lenses. And the new S-mount lenses and even just the standard Z-mount lenses are so quick with their autofocus motors, and they're so smooth. It's not a big deal. It'll focus any of the older f-mount lenses that are AFS. You know, my 105 1.4 works great on it. But I doubt that they're going to go to a bunch of work to make lenses that were really getting a bit long in the tooth before the Z cameras came out compatible, especially for the smaller bodies where they'd have to find a way to shoehorn in an autofocus motor and power it all at the same time.
Speaking of power, I got one last Nikon question from Ken, specifically about the Fullography, the Unleashed, which you did a ATS on last week, right? I think.
Right, and we're giving away as part of the photo contest.
Right. Well, Ken asks, is there much of a draw on the battery when the device is powered on?
So little that I don't take mine out and I don't notice the difference. The only downside is that you would love to have the Fullography to do, say, Milky Way photography or night time lapse. And if you want to power your camera with external power, it plugs into the USB-C port. And so that makes that a little bit of an issue, particularly since there aren't any dummy batteries like Tether Tools used to make that are compatible with the Z cameras. So, you know, I've actually talked to Oliver at Fullography about that. He's kind of thinking about it. Maybe there's some kind of little backup, you know, lightweight power bank that they could make. It doesn't take much power that you could plug the Fullography in and hang off your L bracket or something, and then still plug the camera into a power delivery USB-C capable battery bank. I don't know. It is the one bummer is that you can't plug the camera in and plug the Fullography in at the same time. But
well, speaking of night photography, we've got a couple questions about that. Rob asks, you know, when shooting at night, not blue hour or twilight, how do you get the stars of a specific constellation to pop against the rest of the sky's star field? You know, like how would you make the Big Dipper or Orion stand out?
Well, there's a couple answers to that. One is photograph them in blue hour, you know, the latest part of blue hour, where those brighter constellations stand out more than the rest of the sky against those last bits of blue light spectrum coming through the atmosphere. Plus, it makes for a really dramatic image. There's actually three answers to it. That's one way. Another way is creative editing, you know, dimming everything except those stars a bit. And the third way is something that I'm planning on testing this summer, which is the Astro Blast filter. I mean, I'm sure there are other filters from other companies, but Case makes one called the Astro Blast that is supposed to make the brighter stars and constellations stand out more than the rest of the stars. And I'm going to test it. I have no idea what the overall effect on image quality is, but I'll probably be testing it when we do Milky Way work in Death Valley this winter, if not before. Oh, maybe I can test it in Mexico. I can test it in Mexico next month. So
I've been pretty impressed with how well the neutral night filters help with night sky photography, especially for sort of light pollution.
It's funny. It helps with light pollution, and it also just seems to make the gas cloud of the Milky Way stand out more from the background black of space. I just keep it on there. I love the neutral night filter.
Yeah.
Great.
And then Tom asks about how do you get that rainbow look of the Milky Way, you know, the arch over the sky?
Couple of ways to do that. One, if you're a Sony shooter, get that 12 to 24. Nikon shooter, the 14 to 30 or the 14 to 24, and just, frame that thing wide, horizontal, as wide as you can. It's going to be tough though in a single shot. The real way to do it is a pano, and I would not suggest doing 25 images or anything like that. Keep it as wide as you can, shoot it as a panorama. And I would not suggest using a star tracker for that. I would use stacking. And the reason for that is that the complexity of the star tracker, I have worked on multiple ways to try to set up doing panoramas on the star tracker. And the biggest problem is that if you use those V mounts or Z mounts that they make for the tracker that put your head up level, then all of a sudden you'll find yourself having so much flex in your system that it's not stable enough to be reliable. I can't stand those wedges and Z mounts that they make for them. And it just not having the head level makes the whole thing more complicated. The thing's turning and then you got to get back and it's possible, but I would say, stacking is a great way to capture. If you look at my Milky Way course, there's a whole section on stacking. There's a whole section on star tracker. If I'm doing panoramas, I'm going to stack and keep it simpler. You stack each image, then you blend the results as a pano.
Okay.
And you want to do it, at certain places. So if you're closer to the equator in winter, you're going to get that arched Milky Way running through your scene. If you're further up north, it's going to be tricky because the angle of the Milky Way, it's going to be really low on the horizon. The further south you get in the northern hemisphere, the higher it's going to appear like a rainbow above the horizon. Our good friend Al Akins has done some great rainbowed Milky Way shots down in Florida in the wintertime. It's high enough above the horizon to get it. In the summertime, when the Milky Ways peak in our northern hemisphere, it's more up, moving sort of across the sky. It's more of a late fall through early spring phenomena to get it in an arch. And I've actually done it on Mount St. Helens in the crater rim, but it was because I was up really high in winter here in the Northwest, and that helps too with getting that view of it. So
yeah. While we're talking about panos, Dwight asked, he just bought the Acrotech Panorama Head nodal slide, and he's got a leveling base and an L bracket. Does he need a really right stuff bracket or other bracket to do multi-row panos with that setup?
Not if you're doing rather relatively simple panos. The reason being, simple pano meaning that you don't have something really close in your foreground. When I think of the complex pano, I have a panorama of the Japanese maple that's really famous here in Portland that everybody's seen photos of. That's a small tree where you're actually underneath its canopy while you're photographing its structure and the leaves to each side. Some of the branches are just inches from your lens when you're taking that image. If you do it as a panorama, you really need to get over your no parallax point. And when you tip a head like a fluid head or the panorama head, it shifts that no parallax point forward and backward over the center of rotation just by tilting. Now I have a system that the Really Right Stuff advanced panorama multi-row system that I link in my links helps with that because it lets you tilt the whole camera while keeping the no parallax point in place above the axis of rotation of the head down below. It's only for those weird situations where you have something really close to you and something far away at the same time. Otherwise, just using the head on a fluid head or a panorama or the Acrotech panoramic head is just fine. I do multi-row panels all the time without setting up the Really Right Stuff setup. That's really just for advanced complex panoramas where there's close and distant subjects.
James May asks, again, still on panos, do you expose for the brightest part in the whole scene before starting a multi-row procedure?
So what I do is I throw the camera in manual mode and I have a view of my exposure meter. Most cameras, the Nikons that I use most of the time, they have a 0 and then a stop marker and a 2-stop marker and a 3-stop marker. And you can see if you're in manual mode locked down as you move through your scene, the readout changing, and I sweep the scene and I try to balance it. You know, I don't want to go more than say 2/3 of a stop overexposed, knowing my sensor and how that camera works, that I can save those highlights. And you know, I swing through the whole scene. Let's say I'm doing a 360-degree pano and there's some contrast in the scene. I'm going to pay special attention to where the sun, where I'm pointing straight into the backlight, and make sure that it's not overly overexposed. I would rather underexpose than overexposed. So yeah, I'm looking to the brightest part of my panorama, but I'm thinking about the whole thing and making a decision, watching that meter live as I sweep through the scene.
Okay.
And then I leave it locked down and shoot the whole thing.
All right.
And then look at the histogram.
Yes, and look at the histogram. We had a Lume Cube question from Chris, basically saying, when would you use a Lume Cube versus a traditional flash? He said, I've seen the obvious examples of light painting, but is it a useful tool for portraits, other indoor shots, etc.?
The Lume Cube's a wonderful way to light up subjects. You know, like right now, I'm lit by a bunch of LED panels. My room is lit by a bunch of LED panels, right? And if I jump on my webcam back on the other computer, I just set up a Lume Cube panel off to the side, lighting me so that I'm well lit. The nice thing with using constant light source is that you can see what it looks like before you ever take the image. You can get it lit to a way that's pleasing and then just photograph it. Strobe light introduces a whole nother thing where the strobe comes in so fast. That's the beauty of a strobe. It's fast, it's powerful. It can freeze action. You know, sports photographers use strobes all the time just to freeze action. Even with the slower shutter speed, the light is just blasting out there and making the exposure in an instant. So you can use a slower shutter speed and still get that action frozen. It can come in, you know, bright enough to overpower other sources of light in a way that LEDs don't tend to do. LEDs are nice and soft. The Lume Cubes are pretty darn bright and powerful, but they aren't going to have that action freezing capability. It really is about freezing action. And it's also about setting an exposure for your subject that can be different from the rest of the room. Now, you can do that with a constant light source like a Lume Cube or a Lume Cube panel by just moving it really close to your subject and making them really bright and then exposing for your subject and letting the rest of the room fall away. But you can do that really easily with a flash too, just by setting the flash to light your subject properly and underexposing the background image. And, you know, it's almost like two exposure calculations because that light comes in so fast, lights and freezes your subject. You can underexpose the background while just exposing your subject, right? It's a tricky thing. I mean, I think the biggest thing is freezing action. Freezing action is something a strobe does that a constant light source doesn't. I don't tend to carry a strobe around very much anymore, just because I love the portability and simplicity of the Lume Cube panels and the Lume Cubes. They're so easy to toss in the bag, have charged up, and just deploy, you know, and there's no going into your camera menus and getting your flash settings all set up and figuring out, well, how much flash, you know, you just light it, get it looking like you want, shoot it. So I don't know. I mean, it's simpler to use the constant light source.
It's funny. I think for all the workshops I've done with you before this year, I've always had at least one flash in my bag. And this year I just looked at it and said no, and that space is taken up by Lume Cubes and panels. Yeah. Rob Hogarth asks, could a strobe freeze the rotation? What? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one more thing on Lume Cube really quick. You guys, if you're interested in Lume Cube, watch YouTube over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to do a little quick Lume Cube giveaway for those guys. So keep an eye out.
Okay. Rob Hogarth asks, could a strobe freeze the rotation of the foreground when using a star tracker?
Well, I mean, it could freeze something up close, but the horizon in the distance is still going to be blurred.
Yeah.
If all you had was a monolith or some, you know, thing that's sticking up into the sky and there's no distant mountains and horizon and it's close enough to light, sure, you could strobe that thing and light it at the end of your Milky Way shot. just a little lick of light that exposes it right, it could be done. But if there's going to be a blurry horizon in the background, it's not going to save you having to do the composite work.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a couple of just sort of basic gear questions. Bill Hoppuck asks, where's the best place to sell gear? And you and I have had some experience recently with selling gear.
For years and years and years, I sold gear on eBay, and I've been a member of eBay since, I don't know, 2000 or something like that. It was a great smaller community of sellers back in the day. And I've bought lenses from eBay in the past before lenses became so computerized that I worry about what's happened to them if I don't get them new. The problem with eBay lately is I just feel like there's a whole bunch of people who are sort of shady, particularly in the buying community there. They'll buy your item so it takes it out of circulation and then hit you to do some transaction off the grid, or, they want you to send it and then we'll Western Union the money, and you wind up having to resell the whole thing over again and deal with eBay to get your seller's fees back for having the transaction completed. I've had more runaround with selling on eBay. And it just seems like it's more work than it used to be. I don't mind buying some things off of eBay, cast iron cookware, that kind of thing. But lately, I would much rather sell it to someone that I know, or go through one of the online buyers and sellers of camera gear. And MPB, think about MacBook Pro, but it's opposite. It's MPB instead of MBP.
ProBook, yes.
Yeah, MPB.com has been really fair. And I feel like if I go and I look at what things are selling used on eBay and the big marketplaces for, MPB buys it for a very small fraction less than you would get for it out there at an auction site, minus the seller's fees and the shipping and a little bit of money for all the hassle of photographing and doing all that. They've been really fair. They also do trades where you get a better deal on used gear if you've sold gear, and you get more cash with them. I actually just sent them like $7,000 worth of stuff, a bunch of DSLR and F-mount lenses. Rick,
I did the same with my Sony gear to buy the A1. I sold a whole bunch of old Sony stuff, and the process was really quite good. They give you you can go. It doesn't cost you anything to get an estimate.
Nope.
They gave me an estimate on stuff. I said, okay. And when they got it, they said one was a little bit less in less good condition than I had said, but they had another one that they felt was in better condition. I ended up making more money than the estimate. So I've had a couple other friends who bought some stuff from them now and have said that the transaction was great. So that, they do a good job of, adequately describing the condition of the gear that you're buying. So I highly recommend it as well.
It was really simple. The process is very simple through them. I mean, you just say whether it's good, like new, good, or excellent, good, well used, poor. You make the grade. They have sort of a scale. You don't have to photograph anything. They send you a shipping label. You put it in the box, packed nicely with the shipping label, and drop it at Kinko's FedEx, and then you get an answer from them. It's cool. And then I know David Archer's used Hunts and really liked them. There's other people out there. I just think MPB worked really, really well.
I used to use KEH. I think they're out of Atlanta. I used them and during the film years, they were the guys I used to go to. I bought a lot of sort of medium format gear from them and sold some of my medium format stuff. Their prices, they weren't as good, I think, as MPB was. But I haven't worked with them in a while, but I do know some other folks who use them and love them. So
the same. I have used them long ago, and everybody I know that's worked with them, they've been fair. I just think MPB's system is really simple and dialed.
We have a question about backpacks from Dylan, who said he watched your video explaining your F-chop choice, but you're an ambassador. I was hoping you'd talk about the Shimoda more. That being said, I was just wondering what you think of both backpacks for 3 to 5 day hikes in the backcountry. Any recommendations for that type of gear? He says it just doesn't seem to be a good way to truly use a non-camera backpack for this type of trip. So,
Okay. So that one
there's a
actually
lot to
opens
unpack
up.
there.
There's a lot to unpack from the pack question. All right. So first of all, the ambassador thing, I am an f-stop ambassador, but I don't tend to be an ambassador of any products that aren't the ones I would choose out of the whole group. Now, that being said, stand by on the pack issue for a little bit. I kind of have a big pack announcement coming. So I wouldn't, if you want to buy a camera bag and you're interested in my opinions, just hold off for a few weeks. There's news coming from me on camera bags. Now, when it comes to carrying a backpack for your camera gear for 3-day backpacking trip, I'm just not, there's nobody that I would choose their backpack, any of the camera brands, not f-stop, not Shimoda. For me, the pack that fits my body, if I'm going to carry everything I need to survive backpacking for several days, that isn't going to destroy my back, for me, that is Gregory. They make the harness system that fits my body. It might be Osprey for you. It might be Arc'teryx for somebody else. I would go to a really good pack fitter. Like, our REI has some good pack fitters, an outdoor store with someone that knows what they're doing. And they should put you in several packs and put weight. They have sandbags and things that look like a pillow that's heavy, and they'll fill the pack with weight so that it's bulked up in the right weight, like you were hiking with it. And you walk around the store for a while and see which one actually fits you. And sometimes they'll switch out which shoulder harness fits with, they have different sized waist belts. They can get that thing fit to you like a custom ski boot fitter would fit a ski boot. And it matters because you're going to destroy your back with a bad bag hiking through mountains and woods for 3 days with everything you need to survive. It's just too much weight. And then I would take a camera insert from, f-stop, or I like f-stop's camera inserts quite a bit. There are others out there. There are knockoffs from Newer that are the same thing for cheaper. You get those padded camera inserts, put the things you need in them, even get little padded lens bags if you're just taking a few lenses, and a, think tank, little clear zipper bag that you can see what's inside to get sorted sundries, memory cards, batteries, that kind of stuff. And then I like to wear f-stop's little Naveen camera holster. It's real lightweight. It expands out for a 70-200, or it rolls up for a 24-70. And it's got mount points where you can just connect it to your shoulder straps. It's got other mount points if you want to secure it to the side compression straps of your backpack bag, and the click to just undo when you're going to take your bag off. And you got your camera right on your chest there. And anytime you want it, there it is. I keep the camera like that with either a 24-70 or a 70-200. I keep the other stuff in an easy to access padded thing inside my big backpack. I couldn't recommend anybody. When it comes to Shimoda versus f-stop, I made a careful choice on that. Shimoda makes a good bag. I don't like the lack of padding in their shoulder harness and the fact that it's more like a vest. It's not my favorite. And I don't like the way that they do their adjustable shoulder harness. The mount points look weak to me, and I'd hate to be out in the middle of nowhere and have one of those fail. They're kind of flimsy looking. And I'm not a big fan of the padding in their internal compartments. So I'm just not a big Shimoda fan.
But I will say that David Archer is. Yep. And he loves his. I actually had a conversation with him about it, because everywhere we went on those 3 workshops, if it looked like he needed gear, he had that pack on his back, just sort of wandering around.
Yep.
So
David's always loved his Shimoda.
Yeah. So I know some
Hawk likes his too.
Yeah. So okay.
As a guy who's done big expeditions, there are some weak points in that pack to me. But for jumping out of the car and going for an hour into the woods, it's a nicely designed pack, and it's built to fit a human's torso, which a lot of camera bags I can't say that about.
Yeah. I
think f-stop and Shimoda and this other brand that soon to be announced are all really good at that. So
yeah. Let's see here. A couple of quick hardware questions. Bruce asks what you're using for a computer, and he's looking for a laptop, and he's thinking about replacing it with a MacBook Pro, and wanted to know your thoughts. And then Stuart wanted to know if you had any thoughts on the MacBook Pro with the Max chip. I'll take the latter one if you want to take the first one.
So I did a funny thing. I used the big Mac Pro cheese grater back in the day, the giant desktop computer. And then I got the little, Darth Vader R2D2 smaller Mac Pro when it came out in 2013. And I used it till it started getting, pretty old. And I was waiting for the next one. And then when they came out with one, and to spec it the way I wanted would have cost $12,000, I bought a similarly spec Dell desktop back there, PC with Windows 10 for $3,000, and have been very, very happy with it. And for a long time, I used it as my desktop and my 15-inch kind of maxed out Touch Bar MacBook Pro, and kept a foot in both worlds. And after about a year and a half of that, disclaimer, I've always been an Android guy. I got the original Google Nexus 1 phone when the iPhone 3 was out, and I've been Android ever since. I liked working on the Windows 10 machine better, and I really liked the NVIDIA graphics card that it had built in, especially for video editing and things that I do a fair bit of. And so when it came time, I was waiting for what was going to come next with Mac. And I did a video not that long ago on YouTube talking about this little machine here, which is another Dell. I replaced my MacBook Pro with this machine that has 64 gigs of RAM and a very fast NVIDIA graphics card and Thunderbolt 3 ports and a touch screen that's just beautiful with 100% Adobe RGB. And I love it. Now, I think it would be more difficult if I were an iOS person, because iOS and Mac, they're just things that make it a little bit more difficult. If you're someone who uses iMessenger all the time and FaceTime and all that stuff, it's going to make it more difficult to switch from Mac to PC. But I think otherwise, if you're a person who uses Adobe products or On1 products or, Luminar or, and is most of their life based in browsers like me, I use Gmail and Google Calendar and Google Docs a lot. And I even used some of the Microsoft Office stuff when I was in Mac. So it all is just interchangeable. You don't notice the difference moving from one to the other. For me, they just build the system that I want. And I will say I love the touchscreen on this machine. I find myself using it more than I ever dreamed I would. So it's fun.
I will say, as a contrarian, although I've been a Mac guy since before there was a Mac, I'm actually finally at a point with the new MacBook Pros with the M1 Max chip that I might make that leap. There are a couple of things that I'm still concerned about that'll get fixed. I'm worried about fine art printing, and I'm worried about calibration of my BenQ display. But everybody I know who's gotten the new 14-inch MacBook Pro and the 16-inch says that it's pretty amazing speed-wise, and that the new display is rather amazing. So I think I'm probably going to make that leap fairly soon. So
yeah, I think, I don't think you're going to be unhappy with either system.
Oh. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you stick with the one that works for you. As someone who has had to use both Windows and Mac, I've got a virtual machine running Windows 10. It's so less of an issue than it was 5-6 years ago.
Absolutely.
I think you could switch if you felt the need rather easily. So
I'm one of those rare people. Back in the 90s, I started with a 386 PC and then bounced to Mac when Vista was so horrible. That drove me to Mac, and I was more than happy until a few years ago. So, I'm not unhappy. I love Mac as an OS. I haven't been so happy with a modular, upgradable desktop. That was what really drove me bananas, that I wanted that. So,
which I get. So, all right, we're coming up to the end. Our friend Gary asked a question near and dear to my heart about printing. And he says the holidays coming up, it's time to think about having photographs printed. Suggestions. You want to take that, or should I?
Rick and I both love to print ourselves, but printing yourself is a whole nother discipline. And we're looking at engaging with some training on that in the year ahead, which both of us are excited about. I think if you just have beautiful images that you want printed and you're not set up to do it at home yet, and you don't have time to really immerse yourself in printing, I'll let Rick speak to his favorites, but I've just been really happy with the work that Bay Photo does for me, both with their luster prints and their fine art prints and their metal prints. If you go with metal, I really love the semi-gloss look. I wouldn't get the glossy where it really reflects light harshly. And I think that the semi-gloss is a little nicer than the satin.
I would agree. I think Bay Photo is kind of the Cadillac of the photo printing services out there. I think if you're looking for things like books, 4x6s, 5x7s, 8x10s, MPix is really very good. I've used them a bunch over the years. I will tell you that, if really you're just looking for snapshots and smaller things, Costco is great if you're a member. They no longer have in-house processing, but they still process photos and they'll mail them to you. I've even used Shutterfly over the years, and they're good for, that sort of stuff. I think fine art, I would definitely go with Bay Photo or MPix at this point. I've used Fracture, which does the sort of photos on glass. They're okay, but I think it's really overpriced. If you can get a coupon, that they're great. And there's I can't remember the name of them right now. There's a company that does really great books. If anybody's interested in it, just send me a note. And it's Artifact Rising or Uprising or something like that. They do beautiful books, but they're very pricey. So, and yes, Dave,
question about. Sorry.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say we had that question about Lightroom's new masking capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that for the you go ahead, Rick. Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. So Dave asked. He said, if you had hints on or comments on the new Intersect mask, he's having trouble coming up with a simple way of thinking about this and keep having to relearn. It's not terribly intuitive, especially at first. And I think it's one of those things that, we're just going to have to work with, and, much like masking in Photoshop. But you did a little bit on that in your ATS a couple of weeks ago. Brian Matish has been doing some good stuff on his YouTube channel at matish.com, matiash.com. He actually did a whole video on the Intersect mask stuff, which I think was really good. He's definitely worth looking at for that stuff. I haven't seen much from Matt on it at this point. I don't know whether Matt's off or on a workshop or what, but it's the new masking stuff does take a while to get used to. It's a little counterintuitive, I would say, but once you get used to it, I think it will become pretty darn powerful.
I did a video a couple of weeks on just the basics of it. I didn't get into the Intersect stuff and all of that. And I would, maybe check that out and then jump in and look at what Brian had to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Brian's a very good job.
Well, I think we've wasted another hour of everyone's day.
So
everyone's
remember, everybody, submit your favorite photo from 2021, and those new Unleashed that they're putting out. We lost Rick. You still there, Rick? Can I hear you? I might have lost Rick. Yeah, well. At any rate, that we're going to be, those new Unleashed are slotted to be really expensive, like 225 euros. I think it comes up to almost $300 new. There's actually up there on Kickstarter right now. On my video last week, I linked that. You can get it a little bit cheaper if you want to do the Kickstarter thing. But again, we're going to give one of those away and a $75 gift certificate to each of our 3 favorite image submissions. And we'll go through as many of those photos as we have time. December 7th, 10 a.m. Pacific, sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. The gallery is not up yet for submissions, but will be.
It is up.
Oh, it is up. Sorry.
Yep.
Woody says it's ready to roll. All right. So get those photos in there. 2,500 pixels on the long edge. Name them just your name so we know who you are. And we'll run through and look at some of the cool stuff that people have to submit. The only parameter is that you just submit one 2,500 pixels long, and it was taken in 2021. All right, everybody. Great to see everybody. I hope people are gearing up for the holidays and family and food and staying safe and having fun out there. So we'll see you all on December 7th.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Woody. Thanks, everybody. All right.